Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jason Flame, and welcome to a special edition of Master Motivation held this Wednesday, August 4th, with the owner of Sensei Martial Arts, Mr. Mike Dillard. Thank you, sir, for
Great.
joining me on the show.
Hey, thanks for letting me be on with you.
Yeah, so I'll keep you posted on any comments that come up because there may be some questions from people in the audience, so to speak. But as I reminded you before we got started today, I began this project interviewing those in our industry and those outside of our industry just to bring a little bit more positivity to social media as we look at all the different things that are going around the world and going on. I just wanted to add a lot more positivity than the negativity that we usually see. And so we started the Master Motivation podcast, and today will be, I believe, the 36th guest. So again, super excited to have you and talk with you a little bit today. I just want to let you know that there's a couple of things that stand out to me right off the bat. First of all, when I first met you, I was probably so nervous I didn't talk because there's this legacy of Mike Dillard and Sensei Martial Arts, and uh, meeting you for the very first time was one of the most humbling experiences in that you made me feel so welcome and so comfortable, and you do that often with many other people. So the stigma of Mike Dillard was there for me, but it was immediately let down. The second thing that comes to mind is about 2 to 3 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. You and Kurt had invited me to come and train with you, and you asked me to work on some forms with you, which was a huge honor for me. I did it in my suit and
Yeah,
suit and
you
tie
did
that
quite
day,
well. You did well.
and, and we had some fun. So those are my two things that really stand out. Is that you made me feel so welcome and comfortable right off the bat the first time we met, and then having that experience to get a chance to work out and train with you. So the reason that I wanted to kind of bring your story here is I think people really like to know more about you and your background. So I know you said if I got you started, you probably wouldn't stop. So I'm excited for that. Can you tell me about, kind of just as a kid growing up, what life was like for you, and then how you got involved in martial arts in the beginning?
Well, Jason, first you're very flattering. Thank you. I don't think there's. My mother couldn't have written a better PR introduction for me, but I don't. I think it's very flattering. And by the way, I was asking you to teach me a form. It wasn't. It wasn't just me training. I wasn't training you. I'm flattered. You did a great job. By the way, it was Sipsu, and I had a little glitch in there, and I've got it fixed now. I can do the
Awesome.
form. I can do it in my sleep. What was life like? I grew up in South Oklahoma City, which is not a very good part of town, basically the wrong side of the tracks. I went to what you would probably call a pretty tough high school. There was one person who was still a great friend of mine named Bill Schmid there, who had polio, and he studied his parents to strengthen his legs after polio, put him in martial arts, and he was a black belt under Grandmaster Jack Wong, and everybody looked up to him. And he, there's always a bully, and he didn't get picked on. He was respected. I wanted to be like that, and so I started martial arts training.
That's interesting. So you started martial arts.
Right.
I'm sorry. So you started martial arts because of someone else that was an inspiration to you, and because he was kind of a strong, tough kid.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, sure, I had a curiosity about it, and everyone else did, and I wanted to be able to defend myself, and same thing everybody else has.
Right.
I happen to have this guy's a good friend of mine. I went to his 70th birthday party 2-3 weeks ago. We still are, eventually we got to the point where we competed on the same team a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a great fighter. He now has he's a doctor of psychology and a very successful psychologist, clinical psychologist here in town, and we've had this one-upmanship now for over 50 years. We in about 10 years ago, we climbed Mount Kilimanjaro together.
Wow.
And it's kind of a big deal to climb Kilimanjaro, but when you have to race to see if you get ahead of your good friend or not, I won't say who made it to the top first, but you do make long-lasting friendships with people in martial arts that you trust, and there's a special bond. I think it's a closed fraternity that you can't buy your way in. You didn't inherit it, and you aren't born that way. You earn your way in, and you earn people's trust. That's a very special bond to me.
And that's, I think a good sign of a good friend is always someone that kind of, you talk about the one-upmanship, it just
Sure,
kind of helping raise that standard, right? We always have that friend that kind of challenges us in that way, and it's a healthy, fun way,
it is.
so um, so you said you grew up in Oklahoma in kind of a rougher, tough high school, which, now, like, fast forward, how did that shape you as a person, growing up in a tougher neighborhood? I mean, what kind of values do you think that brought to you right away growing up?
I don't know. My childhood wasn't that different from thousands of other childhoods. Uh, I mean, you would love to, now I sit back in front of the fire and talk to my grandkids and tell them how street smart I am.
Right.
Probably very exaggerated, like most of our old war stories. But uh, I don't know. I can tell you, it wasn't. It was a bad neighborhood then. I wouldn't go there after dark now. It's so
Really.
bad. Yeah,
Really.
really. But uh, I, I didn't live in poverty. I thought we were middle class. I found out later we weren't middle class, our family, but that's okay. But I was highly motivated not uh, to I don't use the word poor, but to get out of that neighborhood. I was
Hmm.
highly motivated to get out of there.
Right. Right. Now, you've lived in Oklahoma your entire life.
Now I lived when I was very young. I lived in Monette, Missouri, a small town
Okay.
in southern Missouri, and I enjoyed the small town life a lot. We hunted and we fished and did all the things, and um, and later I went to Oklahoma State University where the mascot is Cowboys, and
Hmm.
we fit right into that mold a little bit. But then I went to work for after I worked my way through Oklahoma State University teaching martial arts for the university. I was a university employee, and then I got a job, and they sent me to Bombay, India, which is now Mumbai. And I lived in India for a year, and there my training had been, I'd had a little bit of Shorin-ryu, Ishin-ryu, but my first black belt was in Taekwondo. Uh, I, I, that's not my main style now, but I learned a lot there. And I went to India. I eventually found in 12 million people, there was one karate school, and they taught Goju. And I trained in that for a year and had a great time, made a lot of friends, um, learned other ways to do things. And then from there, I almost directly went to Korea to live for a year. And I did study Taekwondo there, and that was also a good time.
Now, were you an athlete growing up in middle school, grade school, high school? Did you play high school sports?
I was a really lousy football player, but I was a pretty good wrestler.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I would have loved to have been a football hero, but I wasn't.
you know, my son is a high school wrestler, and I love. It's just one of my favorite sports. What weight class were you at that time?
Oh, I don't remember. 140
Yeah,
something,
mid.
maybe. Yeah, not
Okay.
terribly big.
And was that something that you did all throughout high school? And did you pursue that any further? Did you do
Well,
any?
my friend Bill and I started that. We wrestled at the YMCA when we were in the 8th grade, and then I wrestled ninth grade on.
Oh,
So
okay.
I tried to wrestle at OSU, and I missed a little bit of my senior year because of an injury, and the coach Tommy Chesbro was the new coach at OSU, and he told me, he said, you got a lot of heart, kid, but you don't have the experience. He said, this is a really tough wrestling program, and so I concentrated more on my other martial arts.
Well, my experience with you and all the stories is how much of an avid athlete you are. You love to hike. You love to do all kinds of outdoor activities. I mean, you're still obviously very, very active. Um, were your parents active, and did they take you on, get you involved in some of these activities, and tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, my dad loved to hunt and fish, and,
Yeah.
and he was good at it. My mother was an athlete. She lettered in every sport. A
Wow.
phenomenal athlete. She she was great at softball, gymnastics, basketball. She did bowling. Uh, uh, I mean, and there's some people in our family that would argue she was the greatest athlete ever, and that's fine. Um, so I enjoyed it. My dad kind of wanted me to get a real job when I was in martial arts. I didn't. After I got out of school, I graduated a degree in accounting, and that was about the last thing I wanted to do. I tried it. Mom wanted me to be an accountant. I tried it for a couple of years. That just wasn't going to work for me. It just wasn't. My heart was in martial arts anyway.
Okay, so let's, I think everybody loves to hear the stories of martial arts a little bit more, and it's funny that you talk about getting a real job. We hear that in the martial arts industry so often. I mean, I was fairly young when I started my career, and I talked to school owners all the time, and that was always the question. But here you are. Look at you now with martial arts, right?
Oh, look at you. I mean, I think I'm an advocate for martial artists, of course, and I think that I know young people that have. I mean, I can do the math with you, but if you get a student value of $150 a student per month, and you have a couple of hundred students, or even 100 students, that's $15,000 a month.
Right.
200 would be $30,000 a month. There's a good living to be made there, and I think I love that because it attracts the best and the brightest,
Right.
and that's what we want to have as our next generation. That's what I want teaching my grandchildren, and I think they represent us well. There's some great, as you know from MAIA, etc. There's some great people out there. Some really smart young people. It's so much. It's hard to start your own business under any circumstances. It's hard to start your own business, but a young person, uh, 20 years old, can start a school and be extremely successful when they're 21, 22 years old, making far more money than, and money's not the only reward, don't get me wrong, but you do have to pay the rent to provide the service. And they can do better than the other people their age in many circumstances.
Well, I remember being a young teenager, and private lessons were the thing. I just never knew that I would be able to, because my parents were, my father was in construction. I knew for sure that I did not want to do that. That was hard work for at the time, and at my age it was 4.25 an hour was minimum wage, and
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know about that. But you start looking at the private lessons, and then the passion grew for teaching, and that's where opening a
Mhm.
school came from. So, when you first got involved in martial arts, you were an avid competitor as well, and I don't think a lot of people really know that. I read, as I was reading your bio, I actually didn't know how much and how long you had a pretty long career in competition.
I did. I'm not sure I knew when to quit. But I was a competitor. I'm sorry, we were right next to Tinker Air Force Base. If you can
Okay.
hear the planes go over, uh, I was a competitor long before Century, long before I knew that was what I wanted to do. As a matter of fact, I was a bit of a starving artist back then. If I won a tournament back then, if you won $500, it was a pretty good day. If you won a couple of thousand, that was a great day. And I've fought for as little as 50 before. So,
Right.
uh, yeah. Anyway, you can see where that goes. I needed at that time a better way to make a living in this industry.
Right. Who were some of the people from your competition days? I believe that you were on a national team for the United States. Is that correct?
Well, in 1989, Chuck Norris asked me to go. He was sending four teams to USSR, Russia, which was then called USSR, and he asked me to go, and I was captain of one of the teams. Uh, and representing the United States. So that went well. We toured the USSR and fought. Made a lot of friends. People were very nice to us. They were just about to get out of being the USSR, and as it broke up, and they experienced capitalism for the first time, and they were very curious about how it worked. I
Hmm.
can remember one guy asking me if we had homeless people in the streets, and I said, well, there's a couple. I mean, it isn't like some of the problems we're experiencing today, but
Right.
he said, well, here everybody has a job. I said, well, most everybody has a job there. And he said, well, what does most everybody mean? Just believe me, it's a good deal.
Right.
Uh, he didn't know, he wanted to know what inheriting meant. When you
Hmm.
inherit property, I tried to explain that. I don't know if I did a good job, but they were great. They were good athletes. It was a good tour. Um, I've always had the ability to compartmentalize. I entered the ring at that time with really bad intentions, and I'd be glad to go have a beer with the guy afterwards. You know,
Hmm.
I suspect that's the way the UFC is today. Uh,
Well, I mean, you have to be a fierce competitor, in the ring, and what you are inside the ring and what you are outside the ring can be sometimes very much the same in some ways, but a different level of temperament,
sure, you're
right?
exactly right.
Who were some of the notable competitors or people that you competed with or against?
Well, you had people that were kind of half a generation ahead of me. Roy Curbin, uh,
Hmm.
I mean, John Atividad, you name the list of those people. They were idols to me. Bill Wallace and his instructor, Glenn Keeney. I could think of all of, I mean, just a long list of people. Um, I remember one time I was a brand new black belt. I fought Steve Anderson, not Steve Nasty Anderson. I'm sorry, Steve Fisher. It was Steve Fisher from California, and I lost that fight. And I came out of the ring, and the lady I was with said, and I just started Century, but I was kind of in the foothold. I said, well, I was thinking about starting Century, and he beat me 5-0 in a point match. And I said, well, you don't want to beat your potential customers anyway. And she looked at me and says, well, you could have come a little closer. Well, thanks for the sympathy.
Right.
No, but I fought against a lot of great fighters. Ray McCallum was always fighting. We probably didn't get along very good. Maybe that's the Texas Oklahoma thing. John Longstreet was great. It's just the usual group.
How, people see martial arts now, and they watch the UFC, and school martial arts schools now are so very different than when you started training in martial arts. What was the landscape of martial arts in general when you first as a young black belt? What was
Well,
the landscape of?
can you spell Stone Age? I mean, we had schools. Uh, I mean, mostly we had schools. If somebody's trying to make a living out of them, which is okay. But we were mostly trying to recruit sparring partners. That
Hmm.
was the demographics. Children were tolerated, but it wasn't the center focus. Is you get 18 to 30 uh, guys that were pretty good shape, and let's go bang heads.
Right.
That was the landscape. Um, we weren't servicing an industry. It wasn't an industry to speak of. Uh, what we do now is a much better thing for society and for people, for children, and for ourselves. I don't, I, I don't. I try not to go to tournaments now because if I've got a lot of customers, and if I go to one, I feel like I should go to all of them, and but I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem. I fought full contact and I fought kickboxing and stuff. I don't have any problem with those. I enjoy them very much. I just I think martial arts has grown. I think it'll continue to grow. I think it's a pendulum. It swings both ways. We don't want to be babysitters, but we don't. But you can't beat up the kids either.
Right.
We got to grow. The most important thing an instructor can be is a role model, and they need to all remember that.
Yes.
They are, and the world is your stage, and they're watching you. You know, if you're wearing a black belt, you're getting a little extra attention. Um, you know, so
Absolutely.
never forget that.
Absolutely, 100% agree. I say it's always it's hard to earn a black belt, but it's even harder. It's harder. It's hard to earn a black belt, but it's even harder to be a black belt because of uh, the expectations, the spotlight, because as we tell our students, people even watching the way you eat, the way you talk to your parents, the way you behave in public, the way you conduct yourself at school, and how you play other sports. I mean, there's so much that kind of rides on that, and our young instructors really sometimes. I have to remind my teenagers that you are like a god in a sense to a lot of our students because they watch every move you make, they watch everything you do, they watch how you brush your hair, they watch what you wear, and sometimes that could be a lot of pressure as well. I know a lot of black belts and a lot of instructors sometimes feel that extra pressure to always be on, right?
Yes, and they're exactly, you're exactly true across the board. And my message to the ones that don't want to wash their hair and keep their gi clean and adhere to all that's expected of them is there's a great job for you in some other field. I don't really need you in karate schools. If you want to be a really good person and be a role model, there's a place. And you and if you don't, in any business, if you don't have a passion for it, do something else. You know,
For sure.
if you have what it takes to be self-employed, if you can make yourself get up in the morning and do the right thing all day, and talk right and smile at people and etc. There's a it's a fun world out there for us.
Absolutely, absolutely, I totally agree. You mentioned Chuck Norris, and you trained with Chuck Norris. He became one of the original spokespeople for Century Martial Arts. Talk about training with Chuck Norris. I've heard stories. My instructor Dennis Ichikawa ran his Sherman Oaks schools out here in California for a number of years, and
Oh
used to
wow,
just talk about his brutal workouts. He just would
they
work
are.
out. Yeah. So
They
what was that
are
like for you?
4 hours. Four, yeah, 4 hours. I mean, the guy. Somebody told me they were going to put a plaque on the floor that said "one more time" because where Chuck always stood. Because I mean, if I've heard him say, "Let's do it one more time," I've heard that 1,000 times. Chuck, but the guy is an animal training. But he walks the walk. He talks the talk. I mean, he's he he I was already a black belt when I started training under Chuck, but he taught me a whole new level of how to try hard. I mean, a whole new level. The
Hmm.
first time I worked out with him, I'll never forget. We though the first time I held the pad for him, he kicked it. I thought my shoulder was completely. I thought just take me to the emergency room right now. It was so bad, and it sounded like a gunshot, and my hearing was, it's just crazy. And we did that morning for 4 hours. I won't forget. After 4 hours, we laid on the ground and did leg lifts, 90 degrees. I mean, straight up, 6 inches, straight up, 6 inches, straight up. Now we worked out for 4 hours, but this is just an example of what it was like to work out with him. After 4 hours, I could do a bunch of those, a bunch. But after 4 hours, I could only do 80. I did 80. Okay. I quit at 80. There's just a point where the straw that breaks the camel's back. Chuck did 200 more after I quit.
Wow.
And that's the way it was every single day. Every single day.
And I'm assuming, how is your relationship to this day?
I saw him a couple of weeks ago. We had our UFAF convention, and I'm on his board of directors, and I'm on his board of advisors, and uh, and his twins, his youngest kids, got their fifth degrees, and
Wow.
I would say, they're like 20 or so. I'd say that's really young, but they're really, really good. They're really good. So maybe they're not too young. I voted yes, and everybody else did. Our relationship's great. He and Gene are good friends. Um, we see him from time to time. He was in Oklahoma City not too long ago. He's from Oklahoma.
Yes.
Originally, he was born here, And so we spent a lot of time here. And when he was working close with Century, that was great. But after a while, he became a star. His star got brighter, and his people that managed him felt like the work he was doing with Century was somewhat diluting his endorsement power, and he was making just a fortune off Total Gym, and
Hmm.
more power to him. Uh, and I said, I'm not going to be able to write the check for millions of dollars that you want, managers. And so let's just all part friends and let Chuck go off and did it. And he did. And it was good for him, good for everybody. Uh, Chuck became a star. No doubt. He's been a star. He was a star all along. Uh, his demographics on his TV show weren't weren't as good for Century as they were for some other products. So
Right.
he was able to add endorsement money to his other income, and we went on to do fine. We're still fine. I mean, he comes around here every now and then, and everybody gets thrilled when he's in the building
Yeah.
and stuff.
Well,
Yeah,
I grew up, starting at 10 years old. I started martial arts in Tong Soo Do with my instructor, and I would always hear stories about Chuck Norris's workouts, and Chuck Norris for me was definitely one of those superheroes. Because he was a martial artist, not just the Chuck Norris, but he was one of the martial artists that taught my instructor. So I always had this. I always looked up to him, and I remember being at a Dodger game one time, and he recognizing me because I had Tong Sudo on my jacket, and he called me over, and then just in the last several years, meeting him at the Super Show was pretty amazing. I have three. Uh, bucket list. I'm just putting it out there. I would love to interview Chuck Norris, The Rock, and there's actually a couple more, but the Rock and Chuck Norris are like at the top of my list. So I even only met him a couple times, have just so much respect for him. So thanks for sharing the stories
yeah,
about him.
he's very interesting. I hope you get to do that.
I would love to.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Century Martial Arts. And you were working the tournament circuit, and then the story goes that you started Century Martial Arts out of the trunk of your car. Um,
Mhm.
what spawned that? I mean, was it because you wanted better uniforms for yourself, or it just looked like a great business opportunity, or give us the story behind Century Martial Arts.
When I was overseas, um, I met some people that were importing garments to the United States, and um, even though I was working as an accountant for an oil company at the time, I was looking for a way out of that, and I thought, what could I import? And gis uniforms became the answer, and and so I did start that, and of course I drove to tournaments. I bought a van, and not a trunk for my car, but the back of the van,
Mm.
and I can remember, I set up a little 8-foot table, and if when it came time to fight, I'd have somebody kind of watch the stuff at the table, and I'd go fight. And uh, I had a little rule I used. If I won the tournament, I got a hotel room. If I didn't, I slept in the back of the van. Uh, and I remember in 1979, I actually attended 49 tournaments. I did not fight in all of them, and sometimes there's one on Saturday and one on Sunday.
Right.
There's not one typically on holidays, but I enjoyed that. And the good thing, I knew I knew a lot of people on the circuit, and so I was able to introduce them to the products I was importing and ask them to give us a chance, and that's it's grown well. Yeah,
Yes, and if I'm not mistaken, Century Martial Arts is still the largest wholesaler of martial arts supplies in the country, correct?
in the world
In the world.
for sure.
Well,
don't
I,
don't
you
short
get,
change some of the factories in China that make for us maybe as big as we are, but that's a different world over there.
Well, I can tell you, I got Bob in the background, and you can
Damn,
see
thank you.
our pro shop back
That's
here, filled with
great looking
Century.
school.
So, so
Great looking school. Is the window to the left an outdoor setting? It's I
yes,
see it on your right. Is
yes,
that an
yes,
outdoor?
yep,
That's
it
cool.
is. So we
Great,
got a
great
nice little
school.
shopping center, and we just opened a restaurant right around the corner. So got that going. Yeah, it's
Ah,
a we
yeah.
actually moved here, believe it or not, in like right when the pandemic kicked off. We moved here in June of last year. So talk
Mhm.
about being a weird situation. We have a 2,000 square foot school that we really couldn't use the inside because, of course, we're in California, so it's a lot different than most places. But we couldn't use the inside for more than 9 months. We taught outside
Well,
in the heat, in the rain, in the cold, whatever. But it was kind of neat because it reminded us that it doesn't matter where we train martial arts as long as we're training martial arts.
yeah.
So it
And I
was a
used to
good thing.
play outdoors.
So Century took off, right? I mean, it grew and grew and grew. Was there was there a real turning point to where as a new business it was tough? What was kind of like the break open point for Century Martial Arts that really made it take off?
I'm not sure there was one. We did well. We started making uniforms that weren't high water pants. That helped.
Hmm.
We tried to concentrate on quality and service. Uh, Everybody wants to talk about price, but really, if the merchandise isn't delivered to you in a timely manner and it be quality merchandise, it doesn't really matter what the price is. So so we offer very competitive prices with what we hope is the best service. Um, that gets harder as it, the company's a little bigger now and it's a little more complicated. It's a lot
Hmm.
more complicated. Uh, when Karate Kid came out in '86, that was a shot in the arm. We made the uniforms for that. I'm still friends with those guys. They came to the Super Show a couple of
Hmm.
years ago. It was there. I wanted to be the stunt coordinator, but I wasn't qualified. Pat Johnson got the job as he should have. Uh, but we still made product for the film, and we had a license to make Karate Kid products that didn't really turn into much, but it was good for our whole industry. When Taekwondo started in the Olympics, that was a good deal.
Hmm.
When action films became such a big deal, that's been good for our industry. I hate to say, but every time there's a war, you kind of sign up a few people. Well, back then, at least in the Vietnam War,
Right.
people wanted to do a little martial art training before they got drafted. Um, that's it. When there's sometimes when there's inner city unrest, uh, then people are more self defense oriented. Uh, so you get little bumps along the way. Um, we invented Bob. You've got your
Hmm.
Bob there. That's a good deal, and Bob's fun.
Bob is
Uh,
fun.
Bob is
Everybody
fun.
loves to hit Bob.
Yeah, I mean, they shoot Bob. They stab Bob. They wrestle him. They kick him. It's always fun. We we've God. I remember back in the '90s, we'd sold 1 million of those Wavemaster bags.
Wow.
Uh, so, and I don't know how many we've sold now. Uh, so that's a good deal. It's just been fun. I mean, I kid the people here. I say it's the longest I've ever had one job, and it's a job I love going to every day.
Well, I had the privilege of taking a tour of Century several times through my experience with MAIA, and it's just so amazing to walk through. It takes up Century Martial Arts is an entire. It's is it more than a city block now at this point,
Well, it's about a 500,000 square feet and a lot of parking.
right?
So that's probably more than a block. We're adjacent to a park. So
Hmm.
um, we did a deal back in '95, in the mid '90s, where we took some of the parkland, and in exchange for that, we built on other adjacent land there 17 soccer fields for
Oh
the
wow.
kids. And we built the outbuildings, the stands, the concession buildings, the sprinkler systems, the lights. We paved it. they came out with great 17 soccer fields, and we got 10 acres to expand our building, and that's been a great deal for our community since then.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
When you were selling the uniforms at the tournaments, did you envision Century Martial Arts turning into what it is today? Was that your vision from the beginning, or did it change and grow over time?
The answer is no. Yeah, no. But I did always believe in martial arts. I've always believed that this was a sport, an art, a science, whatever, that would make its own way in our society. I believe that I personally believe it's the best thing that can happen to a young person. I mean, I really do. And you've had the same. You've had teachers and preachers and parents and psychologists and uh, all kinds of people say we couldn't do anything with this child. What have you done?
Mhm.
We've all got those stories, and I cherish those stories. They're important. Uh, so I truly believe in it, and I've always believed in it.
Well, and I think that everybody knows that about you. Everybody that's involved in your company feels that, and I think
Mm.
that energy is just what continues to feed and grow. With that passion for martial arts, you also created Martial Arts Industry Association
Mhm.
and the consulting company to help schools grow,
Mhm.
so that we can continue to further help more people. It's kind of like when you're a student, you see the benefits of martial arts, so you love it so much, you start teaching it. When you start teaching it, you realize you can teach more people by having more teachers. And by the time you get to the point where you're teaching more teachers, now you're helping other schools to grow their schools, and it's just this huge network. Um, what what was I mean, I know what the thought was. I know why MAIA was created. For all of that said, um, tell me a little bit about the story when you went to Frank and Mike and got them involved with that whole idea, and then of course creating the martial arts super show, which is just the biggest event of the year, and the fact that we haven't had it in 2 years other than being online.
Yeah,
Just
that,
talk about that a little bit.
well, we missed the 2 years, of course, uh, but that's for the safety of everybody.
Sure.
Uh, Frank and Mike couldn't have chose two better people. We got lucky there. I knew there were winners. I didn't know to what extent. I didn't know to what extent you were going to be a winner for us. But we knew from our contact with schools that there's a guy that's teaching in his basement, and he's been
Hmm.
teaching there for 15 years. And there's a guy over here that's got two, three, or more. Phil Blackman just texted me. He got his 500th student. So you've got this spectrum of people
Hmm.
that, and sometimes the guy wants out of the basement, and he just doesn't know where to start. And sometimes that's what he actually wants to do is teach in the basement. I don't belittle that person either, but we felt like if we could provide a forum for idea exchange where and people are so giving in the martial arts, where they could help each other in all these different ways, from whether it be teaching techniques or just smart, just whatever competition techniques, or student retention, or from sales to rent negotiations to uh, all the aspects of running the school, how to deal with problem parents, how to do everything. If we could provide a forum for that, a
Hmm.
place for them to talk, then we felt like we could do some good in the industry, and it would benefit everybody. And out of that, well, we thought, well, how do you do this quote forum? Well, one way was the magazine, MASuccess. Let's publish articles about how big schools, little schools, everybody does stuff, and let everybody read it. Well, the next question, will they subscribe to that? Well, I don't know if they subscribe or not, so we just sent it out free. We sent out 20,000 plus issues a month for years. Now we do it every other month. Uh, and then, well, if that helps, let's get everybody together. We'll get them all in one room and have a convention. So you had the super show, okay, and then it's uh, where I think the most people get the most good is consultants. You know, having someone to. I told Frank one time. I said, this is when he's young. He'll tell you this story, but and he probably has told you this story. But he said, will you mentor me?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'd be honored to quote mentor you." He said, "Well, we talked about, well, where are we going to start?" I said, "Why don't you make your goals for next year? Okay, what are your goals going to be? I want you to give them to me." It was December. I said, "Give them to me by the first of the year, and we'll talk about them. How are we going to achieve these goals? What kind of mile markers can we have as the year goes along? What kind of adjustments do we need to make? And let's make sure we plan to succeed in achieving your goals for the year." And so the uh, the first of the year comes around, and I see Frank, and I said, "Did you get those goals?" He said, "Got them." And I said, "Great, show them to me." He said, "I didn't write them down." I said, "Come back when you're ready to succeed in life." And well, he quickly had a written down list of goals, and if you know Frank and you know about his success, he's achieved those goals.
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
he surpassed my mentoring a long time ago, and now, as you say, he's mentoring others and helping them achieve their goals, and that's the way you want it to be. You know,
You know,
everybody wins.
talking about mentors and you being a mentor to Frank, who was your mentor when it came to business or martial arts or just in general? Who
Well,
was your mentor?
two people helped me in martial arts. Chuck Norris, absolutely. He was my mentor. I really started winning when I got with Chuck. Okay, I was a hard worker, didn't really know much, but I won at one level there. There's a guy named Roger Greene. He's passed now, but Roger taught me how to fight. I mean,
Mm,
Roger really taught me how to fight. Chuck taught me how to try hard. Roger taught me how to fight. Those two mix really well. They mix
yes.
really well. They were my mentors. Um, my dad was a great businessman. He ran a grocery store, but he knew that. And then I was fortunate enough to get the job teaching at Oklahoma State University,
Right.
and I learned a lot about business there. I went on to teach at Oklahoma State Community College, teach martial arts there, and then I taught in the graduate program. I taught entrepreneurial business for the University of Oklahoma as a professor for 10 years, and uh, you can do this, and I did it. I signed up. I said I want to go to Harvard. Well, if you call up Harvard or contact them now on the internet, they've got a program. It may be 3 weeks every summer, which is something like I did, or now they probably have it online. I don't know, but I went to Harvard. I didn't get a degree. I already had a degree, and that worked so well. I went to Stanford. Go,
Wow.
why not? It's a few extra hours of reading, and I would put in about 100 hours of study for every week I did on campus, uh, and I learned a lot about business and stuff. And I read all the books. And I had to read all the books I was teaching. As you know, it's a cliche in martial arts. You learn more when you start teaching than you probably
Yes.
knew before. Well, it's the same thing in business. When you start teaching, you got to stay ahead of that class.
Right.
And my master's MBA students were pretty smart. You got to work to stay ahead of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That's I'm so happy to hear all of this and share this with everybody watching. We're right at 45 minutes, and
that's
I
fine.
wanted to keep it kind of short for you. And believe it or not, I actually have a camp coming into the school in just a little bit. So I want to kind of
Good.
wrap things up a little bit. Tell me what what do you think is the biggest struggle that any business owner, any person trying to achieve a goal, what's the biggest struggle that you find that is the most common with people that are not succeeding?
Not succeeding? Oh, I don't know. I don't know, Jason. That's kind of almost a philosophical question. I think one of the struggles I had growing my business was cash flow planning. I mean, that seems very mundane, but it's true.
Right,
If the lights go off and the rent doesn't get paid, you're not growing anymore.
right,
Uh, that was hard. I was very tempted to take in partners. People, if there's people that would love to be your partner, but
Hmm.
it, and I taught this for years. If you if someone wants to be your partner, and there are businesses that need partners, that
Sure.
need venture capital, et cetera, et cetera. If you take in a partner who only contributes cash, you've got the wrong partner.
Hmm.
I think Frank and I are partners, and Mike Messer and I are partners. They don't just contribute any one thing. They're across the board contributors. Uh, so when you take a partner in business, you need someone that opens doors or adds to your skill set, or can use your assets in a better way than you were using your assets, etc. Um, those are things that matter. But I mean, I know a local guy that opened a school, and he's yeah. I said I'm just going to open. I'm just going to open on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I said, really? He said, yeah. Nobody wants to class on Tuesday and Thursday. I said, how do you know that? He says, because they never come in and ask for classes on Tuesday and Thursday. I said, well, when do you talk to them? He said, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm going, well, who are you kidding? You know.
Right.
So a little self denial. I'm a little sublimation of your goals doesn't serve you well. I don't know. That's a tough question. What are they doing
Well,
wrong?
no,
That's your
I mean,
job as a consultant.
you
You tell
you
them what they're.
answered it. You answered it in about three different parts, and that was really the answer that I was looking for. Um, what 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 do we see in the future for Century Martial Arts? What are some goals that you still have that you'd like to accomplish, or have you done it all
Well, I haven't done it all. Uh,
on your
I,
list at least?
no, I haven't done it all. You know a little bit about me. I'm hoping to climb another big mountain, Aconcagua, maybe Kilimanjaro again, or one of those. I'd like to do that. I'm studying to see if my knees and hips and back will take it.
Hmm.
But I'm training a little bit for that. That's not a business goal. In the Century realm, my son Michael and my son-in-law Kyle Young are taking over, and they're doing a great job.
Hmm.
They probably wish I'd stay home more, and I probably should. Uh, I uh, I'm learning to play tennis, uh, and which I'm no superstar at, but after spending the last 50 years working on my eye-hand coordination, I'm finding that we might all have some talents we didn't know about. We have built a little bit of eye-hand coordination and footwork over the time on the mat. That's
And
about all
and
I'm going.
and you still, I mean, you're still training, and martial arts is still very much a big part of your life. I know you train daily.
I've still got my gi pants on. I taught a class at lunch. Got another one at 4:30. I played tennis this morning, and I lifted weights in between.
That's awesome. And now you're on your
Yeah.
way to see your grandson, I believe, go train. Is that right?
Well, actually, yeah, I hope to be involved in his class at
Okay.
4:30. Normally, I have a regular class at 4:30 here, and
All right.
so that's fine. And we don't. This is not a commercial school. We teach employees and a few of their kids, maybe.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you for all your
Thanks,
time.
guys.
Thank you for being
Yeah.
open. One of the things that I love most about you is just being hands-on. I was very surprised but very relieved, and I had a lot of respect for the times that you would just you would walk through Century or walk through the Super Show and really just be open to talking to everybody. And that's not something that you see from people that we consider at the top of their game. So I have a lot of respect for you, and I appreciate all the opportunity that you've given me to be a part of MAIA all these years, and just
Uh,
just having the chance to talk with you today. So I appreciate it.
I'm very flattered that you say that, but I would remind you that as I walk through the Super Show and talk to those other martial artists, their belt's just as black as mine. Okay,
I
so
love it. I love
we're
it.
we're not any better over here. We love them all. All right. Thanks,
Well, hey,
Jason.
thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Dillard. Have a great rest of the
Okay.
day. Enjoy your training. We'll see you. Hopefully, I'll see you at the Super Show next year,
If not before. All
if
right.
not
We'll have
sooner.
you
Yes, sir.
next year. All right. Thank
Oh,
you. Bye. All
absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Dillard.
right. Bye.
Bye bye.